Mrs. Davenport's Ghost. Do you believe in ghosts? Do you think there are things in this world we can't explain? Things that go beyond what we know? Have you ever heard of a man named Eliphas Levi, who called on the spirit of Apollonius of Tyana, a famous prophet, in a London hotel? Or of the great scientist William Crookes, having tea with the ghost of a young woman wearing a white dress and a turban? Don't laugh. Even the sight of a ghostly turban would scare you, and the whole thing would make you terrified. I, for one, couldn't help but shiver last night when I read about a trial in a New York newspaper. The man on trial will probably be sentenced to death, and it's a sad story. I'm writing this down, trying to remember the story from what the hotel waiter said, who heard the two people talking through a keyhole. There were also 40 witnesses who said the same things happened. Can you imagine seeing the beautiful victim, with a huge wound in her chest, dipping her finger into the blood and touching her killer's forehead? On February 3rd, at about 3 in the afternoon, Professor Davenport and Miss Ida Suchot, a very pale and thin young lady who had been his assistant for years, were finishing their dinner in their hotel room. Professor Benjamin Davenport was a famous man, but people said he wasn't really honest. The best people who believed in spirits didn't trust him as much as they trusted William Crookes or Daniel Douglas Home. People who pretend to talk to spirits, but are greedy and dishonest, said the writer of a book about spirits, are the ones who make our cause look bad. When they can't make spirits appear quickly, they use tricks and cheat to get out of trouble. Professor Benjamin Davenport was exactly this kind of fake. But there were even worse rumors about him. People said he robbed people in South America, cheated at cards in San Francisco, and even shot people who hadn't done anything to him. People also whispered that his wife had died because he was mean to her and because he was cheating on her. But even with all these bad things said about him, Mr. Davenport was still popular with some people. They were easily tricked into believing they were touching the spirits of their dead family members because of his special powers. He was good at lying and pretending, and he looked like a villain, with dark skin, dark eyes, a big nose, and a mean smile. He spoke in a very important, almost like a prophet way. As the waiter left the room, he heard Professor Davenport and Miss Ida talking. "There's a big meeting tonight at Mrs. Harding's house," said the professor. "There will be lots of important people there, even a few millionaires. Hide the blonde wig and the white material we use to make the spirits look real under your skirt." "Okay," said Ida, sounding tired. The waiter heard Ida walking around the room. Then she said, "Benjamin, whose spirit are you going to make appear tonight?" The waiter heard a loud, mean laugh, and the chair creaking under the professor's weight. "Guess?" "How would I know?" she asked. "I'm going to make the spirit of my dead wife appear." Another laugh filled the room, a dark and evil kind of laugh. Ida cried out in fear. The waiter heard a noise like she was pulling herself towards the professor. "Benjamin, please don't do it," she sobbed. "Why not? Everyone says I broke Mrs. Davenport's heart. It's hurting my reputation, but I can forget all about it if her spirit comes back and says nice things about me in front of all these people. You'll be sweet to me, won't you, Ida?" No, please. You can't do it. You can't even think about it. Listen to me, for God's sake. For 4 years, I've done everything you've asked me to do, even though it was hard. I've lied and cheated, just like you. I've learned to pretend to sleep and act like I can see spirits. Tell me, have I ever refused to help you? Or complained, even when I was carrying so much weight on my shoulders? Or when you stuck needles in my arms? And worse, I've pretended to hear voices from behind curtains and made mothers and wives believe that their sons and husbands had come back from the other world. How many times have I done dangerous things in rooms with the lights turned down low? I've worn a white cloth like a ghost, and people have thought they were seeing their dead loved ones. You don't know how much I've suffered doing this terrible work. You laugh at the mystery of death, but I'm so afraid of what will happen to me in the afterlife. My God, what if the dead people I've pretended to be rise up against me and curse me? This constant fear is hurting me. It's killing me. I have a fever. Look how thin and tired I am. But I'm under your control. Do whatever you want to me. I'm in your power, and I want it to be that way. Have I ever complained? But don't make me do this, Benjamin. Please be kind to me because of what I've done for you and because of how much I'm suffering. Don't do this silly trick. Don't make me pretend to be your dead wife, who was so kind and beautiful. Oh, what made you even think of doing this? Please, Benjamin, have mercy on me. The professor didn't laugh again. The waiter heard something hit the floor, maybe a chair or a table. He thought the professor had hit Ida in the face or kicked her as she tried to get closer. But he didn't go into the room because nobody called for him. That night, 40 people gathered in Mrs. Harding's living room, all looking at the curtain where a ghost was supposed to appear. One lantern in the corner of the room gave off a light that made the room look even darker. It was very quiet, just the sound of people breathing. The fire in the fireplace cast shadows on the furniture, making the room seem even more mysterious. Professor Davenport was really good at his job that night. The spirits did whatever he told them to do. He was like their king. People saw hands that didn't have arms picking flowers, and the sound of music coming from the piano, even though nobody was playing it. The furniture even tapped out answers to questions that nobody asked. The professor even made himself float 3 feet in the air, as Mrs. Harding told him to, and he stayed in the air for 15 minutes while holding burning coals. The most exciting and believable trick was supposed to be the appearance of Mrs. Arabella Davenport's ghost. The professor had promised he would make her appear at the beginning of the meeting. "The time has come," said the professor. Everyone was very excited and anxious. They couldn't wait to see the ghost appear. The professor stood in front of the curtain, a tall, dark man with messy hair. He looked scary and handsome at the same time. "Arabella, appear," he commanded, waving his hands like Jesus did when he brought Lazarus back to life. Everyone waited. Suddenly, a terrible scream came from behind the curtain. It was a loud, sharp, painful scream, like someone was dying. The people in the room were scared. Mrs. Harding almost fainted. The professor looked surprised, too. But then Davenport calmed down when he saw the curtain move and something appeared. It was the ghost of a young woman, beautiful and pale, with long blonde hair. She was wearing a white cloth. She didn't have a shirt on, and there was a bleeding wound on her chest with a knife in it. The people stood up and moved away from the ghost, pushing their chairs back. When they looked at the professor, they saw he was pale and scared. He was trembling. But Mrs. Arabella, the real Mrs. Arabella, the one he knew so well, had come back because he called for her, and she walked straight towards Benjamin. He was so scared that he closed his eyes and ran behind the furniture. But she put her finger into her wound, dipped it in the blood, and drew a line across the professor's forehead while repeating in a slow, sad voice, "You are my murderer. You are my murderer." He rolled and tossed on the floor, terrified, and the people turned on the lights. The ghost was gone. But behind the curtain, in the next room, they found Ida Southshot. Her face was twisted and her body was stiff. a doctor said she had died of a heart attack. That is why Professor Benjamin Davenport appeared alone in a New York courtroom to answer for the crime of killing his wife 4 years ago in San Francisco. The end. If you like the story, hit that like button and subscribe for more videos. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Was there anything that surprised you? Who's your favorite character in the story? I can't wait to hear your thoughts.